While we are waiting for people to arrive, may I request you again to change your Zoom name to name your preferred pronouns and organization so we have a better sense of who are in the room with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, but I cannot change the name because maybe it's in the last meeting that in the background, so I cannot change.
No worries, Cheers. Thank you very much for letting.
I'm Savannah from Sada Cambodia. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. It was very nice to meet you in person in Cambodia last week. Thank you. Thanks for joining
Thank you.
us. All right. Benita, just let me know if I can, get started. And how many people do we have now?
Yeah, we can start, I think, since we have a lot to cover.
All right. All right, then we can get started. Once again, everyone, welcome back to our A&O Access and Opportunity Learning Lab. This is your session number 2, focusing on inclusive, programming with tangible examples. As usual, we're gonna begin with the housekeeping rules here. I would like to kind of ask everyone to change your Zoom names to name your preferred pronouns and organizations. Feel free to turn on your Zoom captions and your preferred language from available options. If you have difficulty following the speakers, please note that the sessions in the main room is being recorded. Please let us know if you wish for us to stop it at any point during the session. And please feel free to let Vinita and myself know if you require any support during the session. Before we kind of deep dive into the meat of the sessions, I would like to kind of remind people here a few things. Firstly, which is about our goals. I'm not gonna kind of read all the points here, but I just want to remind people the final point here, which is our end point. After the learning. After the finish, after the end of the learning lab, we really kind of expect to see, practical implementation from your organizations. We are also working on the toolkit as well, which we hope to kind of publish publicize later after the learning lab as well. And we do hope that the toolkit will be also kind of another tool for you to help you, to move your work and our work, forward as well. The second one is about our journeys. You can see here this slide really show you the journeys of our learning lab. We start our cohort in April, then we have the first sessions in May. Now in July we have the second sessions. And then in September, we will have the third sessions, which will be part of annual conference, which is happening in Mexico. And then we plan to have the final sessions in November. But excitedly, during these sessions and between the session number 4, we also plan to have kind of additional or special sessions for you as well. The first would be around the matchmaking event, which we can share with you later, and the second one would be around the activity around halfway feedback and recommendations, which we would like to kind of have more conversation with you, regarding the feedback that you may have about our learning lab, and of course you want to know what you gained in terms of knowledge and experience from the learning lab. Yes, for today's sessions, we are, as I mentioned, that we are at sessions number 2, where you will kind of exclusively have an opportunity to learn from the 3 speakers from 3 different organizations and 3 different countries, on the practical implementations of inclusive programming with real-life examples. And then apart from you're gonna hear apart from, the three topics, we also have, as usual, the breakout discussions where you can discuss around, how you can get your journey started within your organizations. And we also want to hear kind of your challenge or success that you would foresee, from moving your work, forward. And apart from that, on number 5, as I mentioned earlier, that we also want to kind of update you more about, the additional or special, activities that we plan apart from the 4 sessions that you know. And today's, as I mentioned, that we have 3 speakers from the 3 organizations, beginning with Max Simpson from from Thailand, who will kind of be walking you through, recent accommodations. And then we have Rashis Maharajan, from Impact Hub Kathmandu, who will be walking us through, their learnings about, creating an accessible, inclusive, and safe space and programs for persons with disability. And then we have Vinaya Shinappa from Inkraska from India, who will be walking us through, inclusive budgeting and how to bring, funders to our sites. But before I let you to hear kind of experience or stories from these 3 speakers, I would like now to invite Ian Jones, our advisory committee member, to share. I would like to invite Ian to make a quick recap, for us about what we learned from the previous sessions. Yes, and you can also, help Ian with the recap, if you still can remember any kind of learnings or takeaway, feel free to kind of put your feedbacks or comments, in the chat box as well. Ian, over to you, please.
Thanks, Pop. I'll try and do this quickly because I think there's such an incredible amount of information that's going to come from the rest of the speakers. And also you can access the first session on the Andy website, which can be sent out with these notes. So we covered a lot of ground in the first session, but the really simple way that we looked at that is intersectionality is more than just theory. In fact, what we sort of really looked at and realized that we actually cover a lot of intersectionality more than we realize implicitly. So it's actually about making it explicit, not just for our own programming, but also to communicate to funders and donors as well as the rest of the ecosystem. So this was broken down when we look at the key domains around access barriers, physical, digital, and communication. Now, for me in the work that I do, and also with a lot of the ventures and ESOs here, is that this also intersects with financial barriers as well. Stigma barriers, when we look at regional, this changes. So whenever we're designing inclusive programs, intersectionality has to be localized and contextualized. And then also systemic barriers. So there's a lot of barriers here that people don't even realize are barriers. Policy gaps, how services are provided, and then also fragmented services. And this can be really clear when you're looking at things like inclusive transport as a barrier, or a lack of accessible transport that is a barrier, that also compound barriers that lead into that in how intersectionality occurs. So if we can jump to the next slide, Pop. So there's a couple of challenges that also are sort of hidden under this that a lot of people just don't see, which is why we need to make it explicit. When we look at limited representation in leadership and decision making, this is not just about having a voice at the table and nothing about us without us. This is actually around visual representation as well, so that we don't ingrain negative cycles that further exclude. So if you've ever used the Gender Lens toolkit for incubators and accelerators, this is one where we're talking about, okay, what's a visual representation look like, and making sure that that's in your marketing. Now, we've probably all come across this, so we don't need to go into a deep dive, and it's really well done on the website that Andy's put together. One-dimensional programs. It's so easy just to satisfy a funder where they just say, I just want 100 people through a program. It has to be vanilla. Sorry, white boy saying vanilla is probably not the best way, but let's not tailored is probably a better way, just off the shelf programming and copy paste. So this is where I think you're really going to enjoy the presentation from Rashi about Impact Hub Asia Pacific work across multiple countries to make sure that they are contextualized programming. Invisible barriers, a lot of the times we don't even see these, looking at formal education and employment proof for people that have to come into programs, as well as sometimes this links in with cultural stigma and also people's self-identity and self-esteem too. And then, of course, inflexible systems with rigid requirements that unintentionally exclude people. Now, that can actually run across all three of those key domains as well, mentioned on the previous slide. Pop, if we can look at how we can then look at implementing some more inclusive entrepreneurship program, centering the marginalized voices. Now, whenever we talk about this work, obviously everything's around nothing about us without us, but at the same time, there has to be a realistic approach that we can't solve all of the problems all at once. So we need to ask whose voices are prioritized. So in this case, it's looking at who is the target recipient of the training, beneficiary, participant, whichever language you're using in your region, but also who might be left behind. And that's unintentionally as well, which is where exclusion comes in and trying to look at inclusive program from the outset. This also means when we look at upholding dignity, choice, and autonomy, this means giving individuals the freedom to pursue entrepreneurship on their own terms. Now, this is what's really going to be interesting when Vinaya talks about inclusive budgeting, because as we discussed on the first call, is that a lot of actors in the ecosystem don't like paying for extra transport costs if a person with a disability, the core sector I work in, has to travel into a town from their village. So this is where talking about on their own terms means that they're not giving up anything to participate in an entrepreneurship program as well. Universal design, this is critical, and this can be taken in a couple of ways when you're looking at this. Now, universal design is the blue sky thinking of programming and building inclusive design in from the start. Again, we can't achieve everything, but by removing barriers and select barriers at a time, it shouldn't be an unreasonable accommodation for your organization. Just slightly tailoring your communication each time you run a program, looking at transportation options, looking at venue options, and also educating your funders that booking accessible hotels should be the norm. But then also looking around, and this is where I think Max's input is going to be just as insightful. Looking at the diverse perspectives early in the process. So definitely when you're working with neurodiverse individuals, again, looking at how they impacted by the environment and what barriers are there, and how can you look at design thinking to overcome those from the start. So again, this sort of brings in diverse knowledge in teams and co-design. I won't go too much into that, but definitely if you're looking at being an inclusive business yourself, you're probably actively looking at a wide talent pool that either purposefully hires people from marginalized groups or at least has in their process ensuring that when you design programs, it's co-design with them. So these are the first three core enablers as we move on to the second slide. Relational power. This is quite a deep area, so I won't go into this too much, but definitely looking at equity and partnerships and within the organizations. Recognizing that shifting power dynamics allows some meaningful collaboration. There's a fantastic might not be the right word, but also being aware of power dynamics, even within a cohort, was something that came out in the last session as well. So even with a marginalized community, as a facilitator, as a program designer, to enable voices, we also need to be aware of power dynamics at grassroots levels, as well as if you're working with multiple stakeholders in a co-design process, whether it's government officials right through to village chiefs, right through to people living with disabilities. Contextual awareness, we touched on this already, but definitely when it comes down to privilege and disadvantage, this ties into what we just talked about with power dynamics as well. And not being able to copy paste a vanilla program. where everyone thinks that, okay, this is the approach to entrepreneurship. Contextual awareness should be flexible and adaptable. And if you look at the Babson's domains of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, you see that culture plays a critical part in how people approach entrepreneurship in their own context and local reality as well. So making sure that when you redesign or adapt programs that you're taking into that contextual awareness, and also that it takes time. There's no quick fix. And I think this is where Mekong Inclusive Ventures work with Impact Hub through the BEAM program, which Russia can talk to now through to the Elevate program, the next iteration of that. There's a continual learning cycle and process that's embedded in Impact Hub Asia Pacific and the country, do you call them officers, Russia themselves? So, which it means this is intentionality, practical steps, and basically keep an eye out for the toolkit, which we'll have ready for the Andy annual conference, because this is going to be your entry point, which is why today is so important, because it will be inclusive. It will take in diverse perspectives. Back to you, I think, Pop, or did I have one more sneaky slide after I've just wrapped up? Okay, intersectional participation, co-design with people from multiple intersections, create multiple pathways, even if that's just some diversity in the physical or the digital access, and build adaptability, okay, in your own frameworks, in your relationships, and definitely through your advocacy. And that's me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the session. It's going to be fascinating.
Thank you so much, Ian, for your magic in kind of summarizing or recapping everything within 10 minutes. Thank you so much. Without further ado, now I would like to invite Max Simpson from STEP, to walk us through, the learnings from the organizations. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I should have got it to the right slide before you started. I'm Max. Nice to see some old faces and be here today. Just a little bit of background. STEPS is a B Corp certified organization based in Bangkok. We work across the region, mostly on neuro inclusion, but that often extends to other types of disabilities as well. And one of our favorite topics to talk about is accessibility and accommodations. So good one for us to participate in today. I mean, we've covered some of these things already in the previous sessions, but we always just like to tap into the meaning of inclusion, and specifically when we look at it through the lens of accommodations. I think for many of us, and this is not just our team at STEPS here, but the partners that we work with across private sector, government, CSOs, and so on, that we all talk a lot about authenticity and bringing our whole selves to work, to the community. And when we really think about how often we can do that, it's not all the time. And hopefully some of the things that we share today will enable you as the attendees, but also people you work with in the community to be able to do that more often. Just a quick recap before we jump in, just to look at a lot of the barriers that we hear about when talking around this topic. So we see this often in this region. I'm sure many of you who work in this space, this will resonate with, but the medical model of disability is often the lens that this is looked through. So the problem is the disabled person rather than the environment or stigma or systems or processes. And it's all sort of orientated around fixing or curing. The work we do, and I'm sure the work all of you do here, is more focused around the social model of disability. So where society is the issue, the world is what's disabling rather than the person. And often there are simple solutions to these barriers. They're just not thought about in the design of things, or they're not budgeted for, or there's just a lack of willingness to put them in place. I would say after 15 years of living here in Thailand, we are definitely seeing a shift in the past 5 years or so, where with awareness there comes willingness. I think a lot of the time it's just the lack of awareness that prevents change. It's not that people aren't willing to do these things. They just generally don't know that these are things that they should be doing or could be doing, and more so that they're often a low cost or free. So I think we run sessions on accommodations often for partners, and it's the one session that we do that we see as the biggest impact on changing perceptions around disability and inclusion, because it helps people see that these things benefit everybody, and that's where the change comes. Not that it should be like that. We should be able to advocate for one demographic to have change, but it seems easier for people to, especially in private sector, I would say, put into business strategy and to allocate budget to, is when it's something that can benefit the majority, not just the minority. So just a quick recap on that is when we see the individual as a limitation rather than society, then we are really not setting up spaces, community, workplaces for success. So as much as sort of Ian covered some of this as well, where we promote inclusive participation, we put universal design principles in place, and then follow that with equitable policies. I would say policies are something that we see more and more being in place here than other accommodations or accessibility protocols or information. And they might be in place, but they're rarely followed, or people don't even know that they're there. They sort of sit there in a shared drive like we all have, and people aren't aware that they exist. So we advocate a lot for bringing these policies up for revision, putting them into local languages, putting them as part of onboarding systems, so that everybody is joining the organization with a shared knowledge. But these things take time. But I would say we're definitely seeing a shift in people being willing to do that and understanding the importance of doing so. We struggle to find data from this region, so hence why this is from the UK. But I think, when we know that simple changes to processes, systems, environments can really create significant change for people. And whilst half of people remaining in employment isn't the statistic that we'd love, it's better than previous. So I think this is a good milestone of showing that by putting these simple things in place, we really have an impact on people's ability to be employed. And with employment comes all the other benefits of mental wellness, financial security, peers, social inclusion, and so on. So back to this point on accommodations benefit everyone. I'm sure lots of you already see this in your daily lives, and this is something that you've already put into practice. But the idea that we all benefit when things are designed well extends to, of course, people with disabilities. For us, when we talk about neuro inclusion, it often means supports related to communication or systems rather than physical, but can be physical as well. It extends to parents, it extends to elderly people, somebody carrying a box, somebody having a hard day. We often run sessions in some of our social businesses. So we have a range of offices that provide back office admin services for companies, and we have some cafes as well where we train and hire people who are neurodivergent. When people come and see those environments and see simple things for us, like having bilingual signage on fridges, for example, and they think about how that looks in their own kitchens, like our hotel partners, those are the points that you see it dropping, and people go, oh, right, okay, this is not really about disability. This is about helping somebody on their first day navigate around the kitchen, be able to do things independently about asking somebody where something is, just being able to efficiently work. And that's where you see it's sort of the change starts to come. I'm sure we all see these visuals all the time, and they get used again and again. I think it's just reiterates the point that equality and equity aren't the same thing. We get this as one of the major barriers to our work, where we are told that a company can't put X in place because it's not fair, because other people don't have it. And it takes quite a long time to shift that thinking away from equality and equity are not the same thing. And by being equitable, you're giving the individual what they need to be successful. And actually, companies do that all the time when we look at development programs or, ways to put someone through a fast track management program or just supporting them to meet their own individual goals. But when it becomes under the topic of disability, there's often this pushback against it because it feels unfair. And in our own research, when we've digged further into this, it's purely because of lack of awareness and stigma that people feel like somebody is going to get something else that then gives them an advantage, whereas really it's just putting them on an equal footing. And as soon as we start to undo that, then people become much more open-minded to doing it. But I would say we still encounter some language challenges around these terms. Just a quick one. Accommodation is about individual adjustments. Accessibility is about everyone. These terms get interchanged quite a lot, but I do think it's important to just note the difference. We will talk mostly about accommodations, but I will switch into accessibility from time to time, and I will call it so. Okay, so accommodations. When we have these in place, we're really reducing barriers or obstacles to workplace inclusion. It's often around removing discomforts or distractions. These can be through physical spaces or through tech tools. It's making people feel more able to focus, be more efficient and productive. And ultimately, I think making people feel more valued and supported. We have some good regional data now showing that even people who don't feel like they need accommodations feel more positively to working in the organization that's hired them, knowing that they're available. And I think that says all an employer needs to know. You don't need to make this specific for one group, make them available to everybody. And you might see people learning that they are neurodivergent. We see this happen over and over. We have about 15% in any company that we work with end up disclosing that they're neurodivergent post 2 training sessions because they learn themselves through these topics that there's things that they need. So I think it's just another great way to signal that you're that kind of company, and then it provides that psychological safe space for people to disclose if they need to. 20% or 20% of accommodations cost nothing, and the majority cost less than $500. I think we know that lots of things get spent in companies that perhaps aren't the most important. So I think advocating for these small things can be less. And this is taken from the US. I think in this region, the cost tends to be much lower. Most of the accommodations we put in place at steps cost $50 or less. Okay, so a couple of years ago, we launched a partnership with IKEA. They were one of these long-term organizations that we'd wanted to work with because their stuff is nice and it's relatively accessible in terms of price point and being able to buy it everywhere. We wanted also to sort of shift the narrative around making accessibility or accommodations in the workplace doesn't look nice or is really expensive, so it can still be aesthetically pleasing. So we created an office model program to show people the small changes they could make in any office, low cost, with or without IKEA furniture. I think from IKEA's perspective, ideally with their furniture. But part of this process was helping them understand also how their furniture and tools could be used. So one thing that we always look at when we're designing environments, and we do a lot of accommodation and accessibility audits for organizations specific to neurodiversity. So please just keep that in mind as we do this. This is not necessarily focused on physical accessibility. We zone spaces by activity, so it's clear what happens in each zone of the working environment. We have arranged workflows where things work from left to right, so people always know what stage of the process that they're in based on the flow of the work coming through. Everything is organized and labeled all the time. It sounds simple, but it's so often forgotten in many offices because people think it doesn't look nice or they don't think to do it. It can look nice. Please do think to do it. Visual instructions everywhere all the time. Again, these benefit non-local language speakers. If you're working in a bilingual environment, if you process information visually rather than through written language, or if you just need both to cement an idea for you. So we have things like this in place everywhere across our working environments. We learned lots of things along the way as well. After working with such a diverse range of people over the past 15 years, we learned simple things like, staplers come in all different shapes and sizes. Some work better for other people. Maybe the stapler is going to be redundant in the next few years as we become so digital. But of course, there's sort of left-handed ones, right-handed ones, big arches, smaller arches. And just thinking about those small things as you stock your office, can go like a long way to show people that you're willing to think about different ways of doing things. We have job lists for sort of everything everywhere all the time. These are both physical ones that are on clipboards, there's digital ones, there's videos set up on iPads. Now, all these things are designed to help somebody be independent and take away this perceived cost that people who are neurodivergent always need support in the workplace. That can be the case for some people as they're starting, but if you do this well, that support should be faded out over time and should be replaced by accommodations. So we sort of run a dual process of this, is one, helping people be aware of what accommodations they do need, because we find that's often lacking through lack of education, inclusive education systems, and two, making sure the supports are in place consistently all the time. Easy to control in our own environments, harder control when it goes out to our employment partners. But as they start to see it being successful, they're more willing to do it. And these things can look nice. Pop, please cut me off when I reach the time, because I tend to just talk. So I'm not even aware of how long it's been going on for. One thing that we often work on companies with is the idea of job sharing. So it's very common that a job description is not designed to be very accessible for somebody who's neurodivergent, because they will feel like if they can't do everything on that job list, then they don't qualify for the job. There's also lots of barriers around qualifications that people, employers put out that they need. So we often promote the idea of job sharing, where a task is broken down into 5 smaller steps, let's say, and given to different people based on their skill sets. So we'll often have somebody who's good at communication, dealing with people, interacting with the client. We might have somebody who is not literate, who is working on digitization that doesn't require them to be able to read. Somebody who is deep into detail and focus, doing actual computer-based work where they're having to do geomapping or some technical thing that I don't understand myself. But yeah, these are the sort of things that get put in place to sort of help companies think about different ways to hire people. Having options everywhere, so different seating, not, I also had to move away from the idea of this, because before doing this deep level work, I liked everything to look the same wherever I went. So classrooms, offices, that aesthetic, pleasing look of everything being standardized. It's not great. Like, people need choices. People perform well in different environments. So I think we have about 18 different chair types, and then different ranges of desks that are standing, movable, fixed, all these different things. Lighting options, these can be hard if you're in an office environment where there's limitations, but lamps and desk lamps can really help to allow people to control the environment. We see a lot of people change throughout the day as the natural light shifts. So they might need light more in the afternoon, where they start to feel their focus drift. I myself like to have movement, so I'll often stand up towards after lunch, where you're sort of feeling full and lethargic. And I'll maybe just finish on this one, because I think it's a good one for anyone to put in place. We came up with this idea of accommodation stations. So these can be in classrooms, these can be in offices. We even have them in our cafes. And they serve 2 important purposes. One, they showcase to everybody working that there are tools that we can all use every day to boost our happiness, productivity, sensory regulation at work. And 2, they actually give us access to these things in a way that's destigmatized. So the more that neurotypical people use the more it destigmatizes it for neurodivergent. And I think we all learn about ourselves when we have access to these tools. So there's a mix of sensory tools, noise cancelling headsets, different types of timers, tech tools. We often use one that helps remove background noise on your screen, so you're just focusing on what you're reading. I find that one helpful for myself. But yeah, I think these things plus policy, having things like accommodations policies as part of your recruitment process all send signals to people that you're safe for them to apply to work at. And the more that we can physically show that we have these things in place, I think just helps to promote that idea of more inclusive workplaces. And I will pause there because otherwise I think I will have too many slides.
Thank you very much, Max, for sharing your inspiring story. I think Joy and I should find some time to visit your office here in Bangkok.
Yes,
All
yeah.
right. We have 2 minutes, for Q&A, guys. Please feel free to unmute yourself, to ask Max, questions. Or feel free to put your questions in the chat box, please. 2 minutes. Please take your final chance because Mac cannot stay with us. He needs to jump off after this. Yeah.
If no one else has questions, there is a question from Suji on in the
All right,
chat
okay.
box.
I saw
Yeah,
a
the questions from Sushi is there something we can do at this lab about that data issue?
Yeah, I hope so. So about 3 years ago, we set up the Neurodiversity at Work Research Center, which, as far as we know, is the first in the region. So this is really looking at building the business case for neuro inclusion at work. And our center is doing lots of research, but there is, as I'm sure many of you will know, a funding issue related to research in this region. It often needs to be attached to programs or projects rather than pure research. So it moves a bit slower than we'd like to, but if anyone here is interested to know more about that or to collaborate on any research, please do reach out. We have a range of different things that we're working on over the next 24 months. So I'd be happy to engage with people as and where they can.
So next we from our end will you maybe see if Ian would like to join. Sucharita here. Suchi, I was the one who asked the question. But yeah, we will follow up with you to understand a little more and see if, what exactly the depth of that research is, and if there's a possibility to include a lower hanging fruit, something that's like a little easier to put together to kind of make the case. I mean, that's my current direction, but we haven't spoken. So yeah, I will just reiterate, if there's anybody else who has ideas or who's interested, please do reach out to Pop and Ananya, and we'd like to try our best to see how we can support, because we've noticed this issue of localized data. The challenge is across sectors and fields, quite honestly, right? And if possible, we'd like to see how we might be able to support that. Yeah, thanks, Max.
Thank you.
Final chance, any question, any further comments, feedback before we let Max go? No, okay. But please feel free to let Venita and myself know in case you want to continue further discussions with Max or want to connect with him. We would be happy to facilitate the connections for you. All right, Max, once again, thank you so much for your contributions, and yeah, thank you. Have a good day. All right. All right. Now we're just listening the story from Thailand. Now let us move on to Nepal. Now I would like to invite Rashi to make her presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Bob, for the handover, and welcome everyone to the session. I am Rashi Moharjan, and I work as a Programs and Research Officer at Impact Hub Kathmandu. And I'm going to be speaking about creating an accessible, inclusive, and safe space for persons with disability. And this is derived from the learnings that we have had at Impact Hub Kathmandu. Basically, what we try to do here, briefly talking about the areas of work and who we work with. We work heavily with entrepreneurs, makers, innovators, activists, and artists. And we try to test new ideas and take risk while learning and unlearning and asking that question about why not? Why can't we do this? So we're kind of like a wall breaker in some cases as well. We embrace impact and innovation across products, services, business models, and systems. And we work towards positioning Nepal as a land of opportunities and possibilities instead of problems. And a little bit of disclaimer is that in no way do we want to position ourselves as disability expert. We are creating a program for persons with disability, women entrepreneurs with disability, and we're learning. So everything that I'm speaking here today is as we're learning and as we're unlearning a lot of ideas that the society has ingrained in us. And I'm going to be talking about two specific program examples. One is a short-term program and another one is a long-term program. So while I'm presenting, let's just take a seat back and see what are the differences between a long-term and a short-term program as well. But before that, I also want to create this space as a space where we understand and see accessibility as not just an afterthought, but a very foundation of the work that we do, and of the people we reach out to. So it is a core that needs to be embedded and not something that needs to be thought about later. So the first example I'm going to be talking about is the Nepal Assistive Device Makeathon that happened in 2025 in February. It was a 3-day ideation sprint that was for making assistive device for persons with disability. This was a program supported by the Asian Development Bank and Japan Fund for Prosperous and Resilient Asia and the Pacific. And we had over 100 participants, including engineers, students, occupational therapists, prosthetists, and the idea was to make an assisted device within the 3 days, prototype, and then have rapid testing, and then create something that would be easy for a person with disability to use on a day-to-day basis. Now, the main challenges that we had, and this might look funny because accessibility barrier in the venue was the first and foremost problem that we had. Now, you might be thinking, if you design something for a person with disability, how is it that you end up having the very big problem that you should have addressed in the first place? Now, this happened because, and we kind of later came to know that the venue was chosen according to the easiness for our government officials to reach rather than being the central of persons with disability. So there you can see if a program turns out to be tokenistic and you as a program person don't have the independency to say, oh, wait, no, we're not doing that, then it becomes too late. We did have this discussion in the middle, but then when we came to know the intentions, we were quite taken aback by such societal thinking even now. There was limited awareness of disability-centric design, whereas, even the students, the engineers, this was the first time for them to be in a space with persons with disability. There was questions on the scalability of the products that, came as an end product is, can we scale these products or not? What happens after this prototyping makeathon? Another problem was prototyping material limitations. So we had really limited prototyping materials. We only had a 3D machine that we had for the participants, but then this required a major addition in the terms of machinery, in terms of CNC routing, and a lot of additions that were needed here. And while there were a lot of challenges, we also learned a lot of things here. And the first one being that the co-creation is essential when we're creating something for persons with disability. And we can't just see persons with disability as an end user. They need to be equally participating from the beginning to the end as well, from the beginning, middle to the end, and maybe afterwards as well. Interdisciplinary collaboration works 100%. We work with organizations for persons with disability, we work with access consultants, so actually giving that space to people who've been in the field for long. Simple solutions have big impact. When we think about digital solutions, when we talk about technology, sometimes we end up thinking about solutions that are over the top and something that we can't afford. But we learned that solutions that were the most practical was something that could be done in a very low-tech environment that we can use by being very frugal. Rapid prototyping accelerates innovation. So now this was a 3-day ideation sprint. So that's why, we had no time to waste. So the participants were making products and prototyping and testing, and over we repeated this process for 3 days, and there's so many ideas that came across the table, and it was, I think if we count, it was more than 50 ideas. User testing is crucial. Again, if you are creating something for someone, they need to be present from the beginning to the very end. And scalability was also something that needs support. Once we do this program, what is the thing that we need to do at the end? There's a big question mark on that as well. So that's why we had partnered with the government as well to talk about what goes beyond this program as well. And maker ecosystems such as a fabrication lab that we have at Impact Hub Kathmandu really pushes innovators to create something new and to start the dialogue of something such as the assistive device, which was a very fairly new concept for us. So briefly talking about the basic minimum requirements to do a short-term program, and this is based on our learnings, is so first of all, we need to ask, and this is a basic minimum requirement. It can be as advanced, it can be as to your contextual need. But the first thing that we found out was the promotion material. Is it inclusive or not? How is the information being disseminated? What is being used? So because this is the first and foremost thing that potential applicants see in your program, how accessible have you made it? Another basic minimum requirement is from now on, venue is in our top list. And once we take our accessibility consultant is someone who actually goes and takes the audit of whether to assess the venue is accessible or not. So once we go and we do a checklist of whatever is needed, do we have that checklist or not? Do you make it or not? Partners is extremely important as well. The question you need to be asking is, are you collaborating with Access Consultant or organizations with persons with disabilities who have had that lived experiences or not? Audience focus is really important as well. The first and foremost thing we need to be deciding is who is going to be our target audience. Now, as much as inclusive as we want to be, if we do not put a limit to the work that we're doing, if do not streamline the work that we want to do, for example, if we say this is disability inclusive, then there's a possibility that people with different kind of disability apply to it. But in terms of accommodation, in terms of accessibility, who are you streamlining this accessibility to? Pre-event sensitization was really important for us because, as I mentioned earlier, there were many people who didn't know about how to address issues, didn't know if asking something was sensitive, or just didn't know what kind of interaction is important. Post-event pathway is also really important because when we work with persons with disability and when we tap into that difficult conversation of challenges, we also tap into hopes and aspirations for them. And if we do not make ourselves clear that this project is going to be limited, but this is what we're going to do, we're going to create awareness, we're going to advocate for rights. But then the later on work is handed over to the government. I think if this is not clear, then there becomes an unmatched expectation from both the party, and this can sort of dilate relationships as well. So that was a short-term checklist if you wanted to do a program for persons with disability. But now we're moving towards a long-term program that I'm leading at Impact Hub Kathmandu, which is called the Building Entrepreneurial Access Model, shortly abbreviated for BEAM. And also I had a pop-up question that if it was facilitated could be yes. So there is a question, if you would respond, how much do you think Impact Hub Kathmandu invested to make its premises accessible to everyone? And if you could fill it right now, so we have 4 options: $1,000, $1,500, $2,500, $3,500. So if you could fill it. And I think we have the stats as well. So 29, so we have a tie between 1,000 and 1,500. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, that is a tie, but the highest percentage of vote here is 43%, $2,500. Because of lack of time, I would like to end the voting here. Not so democratic, I'm sorry. So I think the majority, we've ended with, now there is a tie of 38% with 1,500 and 2,500. So the actual cost here is 1,500. And this, you might see, is, as Max has already mentioned, is a cost that you would actually do rather than spending on things that don't actually add value to the organizations. If you actually start working on making your space accessible and you take a pen and paper and you do the math, it's not as expensive as one thinks to be. When we talk about resources, many people think that, it's going to add up, like, building infrastructure and sort of breaking infrastructure might take a lot of money. But for us, it was really actually sitting down and thinking, we want to make our space inclusive for a wheelchair user. So how do we do that? And when we did the math, it was not a lot of money to begin with. So this program is supported by the MetLife Foundation, and it is happening in Impact Hub Kathmandu, Impact Hub Shanghai, Impact Hub Dhaka, supported by Impact Hub Jakarta. And we work with 11 women entrepreneurs with disability. And as I'm speaking, I'm currently in the residence of a women entrepreneur with disability as we're shooting a video for this BEAM project. The challenges for this BEAM project was we had so much difficulty finding entrepreneurs with diverse businesses, other than the few areas such as agro, livelihood, beauty, and textile. Communicating or interacting with some of the applicants was complex, and as we were not equipped with how to deal with a neurodiverse condition, because as we were going, we found that it was quite, how do we communicate without using a sign language interpreter? And even if we say that, oh my God, we are going to take this participant, then how are we going to make the transportation easier, the curriculum easier, and are we going to add more barriers is a difficult question that we had to begin with. Societal, infrastructure, information, finance, and digital, all these thematic areas are heavily, these areas are it turned out to be a huge stigmatized areas for our entrepreneurs. And there is a discrimination that is even within the community, which is known as internalized ableism, whereas even within the cohort, some people compare their disability with other disability, and then they say, your disability is not as difficult as ours. You should be able to do this. So these are the challenges that we are facing through and we're going through. And with this also came learnings for us as Impact Hub Kathmandu to say that we need to really streamline the work that we're doing. And let's just admit it that we're not yet equipped to facilitate neurodiverse conditions. And that's fine because we are starting. We'll collaborate with organizations for persons with disabilities and organizations that work with neurodiverse conditions, but we don't want to take away the work that they're doing because we feel that we're not experts. We just want to facilitate. There is a need to redefine and rethink entrepreneurship, whereas a lot of applicants for us were heavily reliant on livelihood. Now, who gives us the authority to decide one is an entrepreneur and one is not, simply because they're doing a livelihood program? The scale of business sectors, as I mentioned, are small. But there's something that can be done here. These are small because of the contextual difficulties. Now, we can't imagine the entrepreneurs to have so much barriers and then, have a heavy tech or AI businesses. That was simply not possible. Entrepreneurship for many was often a last resort, whereas they wanted to work in a firm where they faced discrimination, or they wanted to venture outside and the families didn't believe in them. So what was the last resort? Entrepreneurship. Reasonable accommodation, as we talked about, comes at a minimal cost. And it's rather than the money, it's the mindset of the organization that needs to change. And we also did a research on this. There's so many things. There's only something that an accessible infrastructure can do if the organization is closed in the thinking. So once the thinking expands, that is when everything becomes possible, because there is a willingness to actually do something in terms of accommodation, in terms of inclusiveness. So how inclusive is your organization? How inclusive do you want to be? And there is a difference between positioning yourself to be inclusive and actually being inclusive. So it's really important to understand these things. Infrastructure should be designed in such a way that persons with disabilities can access them without compromising their independence. Now, this is a very, very big element, because no point of a program do you want our participants to compromise their dignity. Because what we need to understand, and this is a very a dark, funny incident that our entrepreneur shared, was when she wanted to go to the temple, and when she was wanting to enter the temple, the priest said, you would have to adjust wheelchairs somewhere outside and then enter the temple. And then our entrepreneurs quickly said that if you would carry me, priest, then I can enter the temple. So, I mean, it's something that, she humored it off, but it highlights the kind of thinking that people think that it's easy for someone using a wheelchair to just leave it somewhere and then access venues. So the kind of understanding and dignity is core to a programming. And I think that once these all things are thought about, then we can move ahead with doing a program. Now, this is a basic minimum requirement to do a long-term program. And again, this is open to changes, contextual additions, and a lot of discussion if it might be. So the first and foremost checklist is, if you are inclusive in hiring or not. Have you thought about, if you're doing a long-term program, why not have it run by someone with disability? Or have you considered, or have you tried that thought of school? Inclusive communication, again, this is the first, and I've been saying first and foremost, but everything is equally important. Inclusive communication, how is the material being circulated outside? Is it being accessible to all sorts of disability or not? If that is not the case, how do you start conversations? Inclusive curriculum. Now we're doing a business incubation for our women entrepreneurs with disability, and how are they accessing the curriculum? Is for our case, especially in Nepal, the language becomes a huge barrier, where I've realized that even one word, when I'm speaking Nepali, and even if one word of English comes in, it sort of destroys the whole concentration and sort of disrupts the understanding. So how inclusive do you want to be? Accessibility consultant is something that we hired when we're doing this BREAM project in the beginning. We hired an accessibility consultant who is a wheelchair user as well. So we had an accessibility audit, and we had to change the space. And I really loved this process, because it was just not changing the infrastructure, but it was also our colleagues equally thinking about, oh, there is a staircase. What do we do about that? Or, oh, that is a slippery slope. How do we deal that? So it's not just one person going behind these things, but an organization that is now thinking about accessibility in a really embedded sense. Target audience clarity. Now, this is something that I've been talking about. This is something that we had clarity over the time, whereas we said that we are not equipped, and now we are focusing on persons with mobility impairments, because we want to start something there. Team orientation. I think this is crucial, because once we understand how do we create inclusion, I think it's important for us as program people to be equally aware about all these things. And we had a very good orientation that was led by Ian, and we still use all the materials and go back to our discussions, because it was really one of those sessions. Inclusive budgeting. Is the budget flexible? Because there are so many things that I, as a program person, I'm realizing as we're going, and life happens in the middle of a program. So what do you do? And also in the middle of the program, you realize that so much so that you have the stories of women entrepreneurs with disabilities. And now what do? They have a lot of emotional trauma that is lingering around. How do you address that? So now we're also adding an additional layer of well-being, mental and emotional well-being. And this is something that a flexible budget had allowed us to do so, because we're understanding the needs as we're going. And the budget is also allowing us to do so. So it's really important to have that interaction with the organizations or the donor partners, meeting that expectations from the beginning, that this is a program that needs constant human integration, and there are changes that we can't oversee right now, and that can happen in the middle. So negotiating is really important. These are some of the lived examples where in the first picture you see our access consultant, Deepak KCG, was actually helped us break break a very inaccessible washroom, and now it's accessible because of his help. The entrance was a very slippery slope there, and we had cemented, and we have broken down so many layers of this space. And now it's the space is accessible to everyone. And I remember my colleague saying that, oh my God, this is accessible now. It was so difficult for me to bring my scooter down this lane. And I had this thought that we did it for this program, but now it's really inclusive and accessible to everyone. So when Max talked about accessibility being not just for persons with disability, for everyone, this really struck a chord with me. And I just want to end by saying that respect and dignity is the first step to true inclusion, and accessibility should be in movement, in space, and information. And this is something that needs to be planned. That is why we have everything ready for us now to move on to the next step forward for us. And it's not something that we patch at the end just to position ourselves as inclusive. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions now. I couldn't see the chat now, but I'll just stop sharing.
Thank you, Rashi. Thank you very much. Guys, feel free to unmute yourself to ask questions, please. Put your question in the chat box. Okay, we have a questions from. Okay, cheers, Sovana. How include sustainability of SDG in the program? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Clearly not my okay. So I think I will answer Shia's question. I don't know if I'm butchering the name completely, but I think if you want to, go through all the 16 Sustainable Development Goal, it hits in the partnership, it hits in the inclusive working spaces, it hits in the equality. So I think once you design a program, it's definitely the Sustainable Development Goals. They're really broad ideas, and it definitely hits on equality. And I think if you design a program, and if you could just jot down 16 development goals and then see how the program is addressing, I think it addresses most of the sustainable development goals. And it is equally possible for you to make that connection, because I don't think sustainable development goals gives you that connection to link. It's you as a program person who links it by your own contextual understanding. So I think at any given point, in the beginning, in the end, it's really important that you create that link between how is the program actually addressing the sustainable development goals. Actually, this is a very good idea if you're writing a report for a donor, whereas they want you to specify which kind of SDG you're hitting. And I think this, and I forgot the numbers, but I think this hits at least 5 of the SDGs, which might be a good rapport in the information that you share. Oh, yes. Ian has shared a very lovely picture. Thank you, Ian.
Any questions, any comments, feedback? Your final chance. Okay. Again, if there is no feedback or comments, then and if you would like to kind of continue conversations with Rashis, feel free to let Vinita and myself know, and we would be happy to facilitate the connection. So thank you very much, Rashis, for your informative presentations. Rashi is still with us for the breakout group discussion, so feel free to continue your conversation with her. All right, thank you, Rashi. Well, guys, I think you have heard about budgeting, inclusive budgeting, participatory budgeting several times, but some of you might kind of don't understand it well, what that budgeting is about. So today, we have really a good opportunity to that we have Vinaya here from Inkraska, who can share this kind of topic in more details. And I saw your slides and it looked very interesting, Vinaya. So I hope everyone will enjoy her presentation as well. Vinaya, over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you,
You
Paul.
you want me to share the slide, right? Or you? Okay.
No, it's okay. I have it. I'll
All
share
right.
it. You can see it, right? Just
Yes, we can see it. The button.
sorry. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here with this topic, inclusive budgeting. A lot of it has already been touched upon in the by the earlier speakers, Max, Rashi. Inclusive, we are a social enterprise. We're a part of the Enable India group. We work with organizations when they are looking at disability inclusion, but really the concept of inclusive budgeting actually touches upon every single community that is marginalized or ignored in some way. We work across disabilities and across sectors and organizations across any aspect of disability inclusion. So one of the aspects that we have worked very closely with is accessibility, accommodations, and the fact that a lot of organizations push back saying that they do not have a budget to do certain things, and that's a reason for not wanting to hire or including, sorry, Sucharita, sorry.
Sorry for the interruption, and Bob and Vinita, my apologies. I know we had said we would not record because we wanted to create a safe space. But the feeling that I get is especially this inclusive budgeting piece, Vinaya, might actually be very useful to make available as a public good. So I just wanted to check if it would be okay to
Sure.
record this, just this bit. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. But also just to make sure that the others are okay. If you're not okay, please, I know it's kind of putting you on the spot, but please do let us know. The other is we will record it. Oh, Vinita says the full conversation is being recorded. Okay, my bad. Sorry, Vinaya, back to you.
And as we mentioned during the housekeeping rule, at any time any of you would wish to pause the recording, please let us know. We will pause.
Okay. No issues at all with the recording, so we can go full ahead. Like I was saying, that one of the things that we really get a pushback on when we work with organizations is the fact that they say that we're not looking at hiring a certain disability because they feel they're not ready and they don't have a budget, and so these are some of the aspects that we're going to discuss as we go along. So what do we mean by inclusive budgeting? It's budgeting that's also known as participatory budgeting. It's something that we've been hearing the word participatory throughout this session. It makes sure that people across all groups, individuals, their voices are heard, their inputs are considered, which makes sure that everybody has a say and is heard, and in the end, there is access for all. Why is it that this is important? Because traditionally in budgeting, the traditional way of budgeting is usually top down and ends up leaving a lot of people out of the scope of budgeting. So, reasonable accommodations or accessibility, these tend to get ignored in a top-down approach of budgeting, which follows, it tends to perpetuate entrenched ways of thinking and attitudes. Whereas inclusive budgeting makes sure that everybody is considered, including marginalized groups. So at its core, it is budgeting that is fair and representative and ensures that it promotes equity across all groups, right? And as we've just heard, that it promotes it includes the voices of those who are marginalized or underrepresented in traditional budgeting. Now, why is it important? And I think as organizations here who are active in the space of in the social sector, in development, as entrepreneurs who are looking at creating an impact across society, inclusive budgeting therefore becomes very important because it is ensuring that there is impact and equity and everybody gets taken along. And so its budgets, like I said, trends to reinforce inequalities in the traditional format, whereas inclusive budgeting promotes equality of access and addresses unmet needs. And in the process, it makes sure that everybody moves upwards and nobody is left behind. We had this question earlier that how does this impact the sustainable development goals? The moment we are saying that everybody's unmet needs are addressed and we're looking at taking them along, it automatically hits a number of the Sustain SDG goals, whether it's about inclusion, about access, about livelihoods, making sure that people have a decent lifestyle, etc. So the products and services that are designed keeping when budgeting is inclusive, it makes sure that the products and services we deliver have greater impact and relevance to the communities that we are working in. And lastly, of course, it has a great impact on how the organization is viewed as the image of the organization in terms of whether it's viewed as taking everyone along or is it just catering to a very niche segment, and it builds that trust. And in the long run, building trust and that brand goes a long way in building that brand value and getting a greater degree of support in the market as an organization. So these are points that we've already touched upon, that what is the key, what are the foundational elements of inclusive budgeting? One is, of course, participation. It's the most important because it engages the people who the products and services are going to impact. It asks them proactively what are their needs, what is being met, what is not being met, and builds it into the program. There is transparency, so everybody is now aware of how the budget was created and what to expect. They feel a sense of ownership, and also, like I said, the trust, because now if something is not possible initially but is going to come at a later date, people are more open and accepting because they have been involved in the process and they know where the challenges lie and they know that the intent is there to get there. And of course, it promotes equity because it prioritizes voices across all groups. Now, who should be included? Obviously, everybody, and more so the voices of those who have been traditionally ignored. I know that we think in terms of disability when we say reasonable accommodation or accessibility, but really inclusive budgeting can extend across a wide range of groups. It could be different sexual orientation, different religions. It can even be something as simple as diet. When you have an event in your organization, are we looking at people who may have dietary restrictions and coming there for a full day program, or language interpreters? I think Rashi mentioned that when she's doing a program in the local language, and then if she introduces a word in English, how it can impact the entire understanding. And there are people who may feel, who may not get the real understanding of what's happening and be left behind. So some of the challenges to inclusive budgeting, we've seen that both with what Max covered and Rashi covered. Max was talking about how a lot of things are not necessarily expensive, and Rashi, I think, ran a poll to ask how much do we really think that was spent on making Impact Hub Kathmandu accessible. One of the biggest challenges to inclusive budgeting is the fact that it comes with the preconceived notion or the opinion that it is necessarily expensive. Any form of access measures or inclusion measures entails not only entails expense, but is a huge expense, which is going to throw the budget off. There's actually low awareness on what inclusion may actually entail. And a lot of times when people find out what the measures are and the fact that it doesn't really cost that much or may not cost anything in the first place, they're quite surprised. The lack of data. I think this we covered that in this region, we actually have a real challenge in terms of data. As an organization which works in this sector, we don't really have the numbers or an idea of what percentage of people are not being catered to or ignored, or which region they come from. And even my own organization, even if we are in the city of Bangalore in India, and we don't really have an exact feel in terms of how many PWDs are in our local area and the different categories. The last census that was done is 2011, pretty dated, and therefore forming some of these decisions is based on our own individual experience rather than hard data. Resistance to change. Budgeting and finance actually remains very core to an organization, and very often there's a great reluctance to let go of it and to make it participatory. It's usually something that's very closely controlled, usually at the top, and not very open to having people come in and participate in it. And of course, the capacity and the resources. It takes time. Even if we are talking about engaging with the community, it takes time to build their own skills, to know what they want to ask for. When we have engaged with communities, many a time we've found that they really don't know what they want to ask for themselves. They have needs, and but they don't know how to voice it. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. So it's also about educating the community in terms of how to self-advocate. Now, this is a huge myth that accessibility is expensive, and this is one of the biggest barriers to creating accessibility. But research has time and again shown that building it into the design is way, way cheaper than doing a retrofitting. So planning accessibility at the beginning before creating the infrastructure is there's a graph at the side which shows that the cost of retrofitting or addressing barriers goes up exponentially once the building or the infrastructure is already in place. And this is true of both soft and hard infrastructure, whether we are talking about buildings or we are talking about digital resources like websites or applications, etc. Once they to build in accessibility when they're being coded is just a matter of discipline to ensure that every aspect of the software code is accessible. But to go back and to do a retesting and identify which aspects are not accessible and then try to correct it is always a much, much more expensive affair. There's, of course, the hidden costs of doing nothing. Max mentioned that we are seeing a change in the last 5 years. It's true even of the region we operate in. that non-compliance, although the rules were there, enforcement has been pretty poor. But we've been seeing in the last 2 to 3 years that communities have been advocating for themselves, and non-compliance has been leading to lawsuits and enforcement through the courts of what exists as a law but is not being complied to. It results in lost customers and employees. We live in a digital world, and marginalized communities are becoming more vocal and talking about which businesses are accessible, which businesses are inclusive, and they spread the news, and this goes viral pretty fast. A lot of what we do in terms of accessibility is actually zero cost. So for example, this presentation has alternate text, which means that when a person who's using a screen reader were to read these slides, it reads out what is on the screen, so including the graph. And it hasn't taken me more than 2 minutes to do that, because all I've done is copied the text and put it in the alt text box so that the screen reader can read it out. And it's zero cost. It's a feature that comes along with Microsoft Office or whichever application we're doing. Similarly, a lot of resources are actually out there. A screen reader, you can get open source screen readers which can be used. So if we're talking about businesses which are at the early stage, which are bootstrapped, a lot of resources are actually readily available out there at zero cost. So one is about the awareness, and the other one is bringing in the commitment, which means that we make it a habit to build in, the accessibility, which is there easily at hand, to make it a habit, to make sure that we do it at every meeting, at every event, at every organization, at every occasion that, where we are out there conducting something. Putting out any resources, making sure that it's available. As an organization in our early stage, we encouraged, and we still do, all our employees to learn sign language so that, we were also bootstrapped at a certain stage, and it was an easy way of ensuring inclusion without having to depend on a paid resource as an interpreter. So we've had temporary ramps which we moved around the office depending on when we were in rented premises, depending on where it was required. Like I said, certain tools are built in, like transcription in online meetings. There are open source apps which help in converting text to speech, speech to text. The volunteering community is another community that can be tapped easily for if you're conducting an event and you look out for volunteers in the community to help with inclusion. So it's also about understanding the fact that not everything comes with a cost. And when it does, it's usually a tenth of what people imagine it would be. And I think, I don't remember whether Max said it or Rashi said it, it's less than $500 usually, and 20% of the accommodation actually costs next to nothing. So what are the steps in inclusive budgeting? One is to create awareness by training teams to engage with the stakeholders, to ask and not to assume, which means that in the traditional system of budgeting, the assumption is that we know and we are doing whatever is possible. But the biggest assumption, and that's the most wrong assumption, because we really don't know what the community wants. We really don't know what the groups want. A large number of times, their priority may be something else, and we are going in with our assumptions and understanding. So engaging with the stakeholders and making sure that whatever comes in as inputs then gets reflected in the budget design. And making sure that after it's included in the budget design, it actually gets into the implementation stage and gets into delivery, which means that it is creating the impact and serving the communities that it was originally intended to cover. And the last step is very important to track and review. And very often this is the step that's missed out. We think that we've put something in place and it's done. But to go back and ask whether the measures are really working and whether there's something else that can be done. And also to keep engaging with what's happening out there and changing needs, because there's always new solutions that come out, new stuff that is better designed or maybe more, in cost-wise, maybe more advantageous. So the keeping the cycle going in terms of tracking, reviewing, and constantly going in that loop is important. With the right inputs, inclusive budgeting is actually a tool for equity. It ensures that everybody is taken along, nobody is left behind, and it ensures that our products, services have the intended impact. Yeah. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Vinaya. Yes, guys, any questions, any feedback or comments? Anything you would like to share? All right, we have a question from Shazwana. Can you share more about budget analysis? How many components or percentage of GBR should be considered for responding to gender needs in the programming?
Okay, so there's no right or fixed percentage when it comes to inclusion. The answer is, I think Ian mentioned it earlier, that it's not possible to do everything or maybe do everything in one go. So it's gradual and you do the best that you can initially. The more that we can do, it's better. So I wouldn't say that a certain percentage can be allocated. But what is important is to know what is required and then start prioritizing and pick up the ones that can be addressed. The ones that can be addressed at no cost should, of course, be picked up immediately, and then prioritize with the rest which ones are most important and can be done, and to gradually ensure that with time we are covering as much as possible.
Thank you. We have next question from Keisha from Shipa Worldwide IDE in Cambodia. What is the general sentiment from your partners or funders for keeping budgets flexible?
Okay. We've had a mixed experience. We've had funders who are supportive, and we've also had funders who have pushed back in terms of setting what is their priority. We have made sure that for us, it has been important as an organization that our messaging, that we walk the talk. So it has been a hard decision in the initial years, but if we have not found that a funder's ethos is keeping with our own ethos of making sure that we are able to take everyone along, especially because we're an organization that works with people with disabilities. Our own employee base includes nearly 48% of people with different disabilities. We have been in tough times, but we have pushed back to say that this is something that we can't work with this funder if this is the situation. But in general, we have found that 8 out of 10 funders do accept budgets which are flexible, especially considering that most of the inclusion aspects that we needed to build in don't really come in with a high cost. It's been more of addressing attitudes. Like I said, the biggest challenge is awareness. It's a myth that a lot of the accessibility involves a huge expense. And when it is built into the design, it keeps the cost down, and we found that funders are generally open to the idea.
Thank you. Anyone else has any other questions? Your final chance before we move on to the breakout discussion. Right. If there is no further questions, then we can move on to the next segment. Vinaya, once again, thank you very much, for your contribution, your presentations, and for sharing, insights around, but inclusive budgeting from your organization. Thank you very much. Vinita, would you? Okay, we're gonna break you into two breakout rooms, and the first room will be facilitated by Rashis, and the other ones will be facilitated by Vinaya. We have 20 minutes for the discussions, and then we come back to the main room. Thank you.
I have opened the room. So participants.
Okay, great. I think we do have everyone back in the main room. We have 5 minutes left. Maybe can I just ask if there is anyone from each group would like to kind of how to say volunteer or nominate themselves to share what you learned, from your small discussion. Anyone's from Vinaya room? No? Or Vinaya, would you like to share anything? You are on mute if you're speaking.
Sorry, I was saying I was hoping somebody who else would do the talking based on what they heard in the room. Does anybody want to go? Okay, we had some, I'll go since nobody is saying anything. We had a couple of experiences shared in terms of organization journeys. Mehul spoke about how he has 3 employees with disabilities, one of whom is visually impaired and the other is deaf. And the experience, the journey in learning sign language, how some of them know sign language and some of them intuitively use whatever signs they have to be able to communicate with the deaf employee, how they've worked on converting some of their training content into visual-based thing. Not a lot of it, most of what he spoke about didn't actually involve cost, more of intent. It could be viewed initially as involving effort, but in the end, it wasn't as much effort as it looked like on the surface. So, which brings us back to the point that a lot of access and inclusion is not really high cost, but more of commitment, discipline, and intent to make it a part of the way of working. And yeah, then there were some questions around gender and inclusion. What are the experiences, about how it is viewed and how I mean, we heard about the organization's experience and the difficulties, some of the plus points when working with funders and some of the challenges in terms of flexibility with the budget. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. I know we are running out of time, but I don't want to kind of cut the momentum. Anyone from Rashi room would like to share? Maybe Rashi.
Really? I think we had some interesting discussion. Is there anyone? Okay.
Let me share a little bit, just very quickly.
go ahead.
So we did discuss about some of the personal challenges that we have in our own respective programs. So that was kind of interesting because some of them were shared, of course, and some of them were very personal that, maybe some of my problems weren't something that the others have experienced. But it was overall a good learning experience because I think Rashi really did support with kind of some ideas on how to navigate. And it was good to learn both digital inclusion as well. That's something that, I haven't really thought about specifically, and that's something that we learned. But I'll leave it to Rashi to kind of go over exactly into the details of discussions because I think she'll do a better job.
You've absolutely done a fantastic job, Faria, and I think that's most of the discussion. We really shared about, and I'm speaking at a really fast speed, but we really talked about how the presentations and how the speakers has resonated some of our biases that we had about how, when we talk about this reasonable accommodation, it ties a lot with resources and finances, but reality is so different. And they've also experienced it. Isha shared that, she had experienced this even when working with women entrepreneurs, and you bring that intersectionality lens and then see that, accessibility is actually a universal design, and it is there to support everyone. Which is how accessibility or inclusion pays dividend for us, because if you actually do something with persons with disability in the back of their head. Now they are going to be your customer base, and they're now going to help expand your business. So they're a huge market for you as well. And if you're doing all the right things now, it is definitely going to pay later. And then we dived into how difficult it is for women entrepreneurs or women to take space in the digital space, because the digital literacy is very low. When we talk about we talk about the capital of the country, still the digital literacy is so low. So how do we talk about digital literacy in an semi-urban or a rural area? Because there's a lot of things that needs to take into account. So there are a lot of things that we traditionally do without questioning. For example, if you want someone to enter your program, but then you have a standardized Google form, then maybe it is time for you to create innovative ways for them to still apply to your program digitally, but then easily. And here you can take the help of people who are around their vicinity, and go beyond. It's like, how beyond are you willing to go? And there's also challenges in informal businesses, and informal businesses are some things that will continue to exist and are existing, and they make up so much of the economy. So how do you work with informal businesses, but then also convince your donors that the payment is still being made? What are the verifications, innovative ways of verifications that you can create? So I think these are the things that we touched upon, and there's a lot of questions also, but always there to support and discuss, learn and unlearn, redefine and define. And yeah, that's it, Pop.
Thank you so much, Rashi, for sharing that. We don't have time now, but just anyone have any final questions? Feel free to do so. Counting 1 to 10 in mind. Any final questions? Any feedback? Any comment? If no, thank you very much, everyone, once again, especially thank you to all of our speakers, Ian from Macro Inclusive Ventures, Rajis from Impact Hub, Kathmandu, Max from STEP, and of course, Vinaya from Inclasscom. Thank you very much. As usual, Vinita and I will kind of send you a follow-up email, including recordings, presentations, and more information about our next steps. Yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Look forward to seeing you in the next sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for learning.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Have a good day. Okay, thank you.